The biggest thing with hockey is I've always wanted to do something impressive with hockey. That's what
Mhm.
I've always wanted to do. I put a lot of my heart and soul into this sport. I want to achieve something, and I knew I could achieve something still as a player, but I also wanted to start investing somewhere I could really take it to the next level.
Hello and welcome back to Rinkside Rundown, the podcast that brings you inside the world of women's hockey, one story at a time. I'm your host, Chris Sinclair, and today I'm excited to be joined by Eva Harrison, a hockey referee and former player with experience across the UK and Sweden. Eva brings a unique perspective on the game, both on the ice and behind the whistle. Eva, thanks so much for being here. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Good. Yes, I am so excited to dive into your story. So let's do just that. We're going to start off at the beginning, and I want to know from you, how did hockey enter your life, and what was it about the game that really stuck with you?
Yeah, so I've got a bit of two approaches here. So the first is I've grown up most of my life in the UK, but I was actually born in Nova. That's Northern Virginia, near DC. My mum's American, my dad's British, and as such, I have relatives who played the game who so I was always aware of the game because my mum's originally from Philly area, relatives who live in North Jersey, and I had one cousin who played, and so the games when I'd ever go visit them, there would always be Flyers games on in the house. So I was aware of it that side, but I also lucked out in that I grew up very close to a rink. So the UK doesn't have so many rinks. It has about 50 off the top of my head, but I grew up near one in a place called Guildford. And as such, I used to I used to play more than just Guildford. I never played there, but anyway, I grew up near Guildford, and I used to go to matches in Guildford and watch a local team there called the Guildford Flames. And just would say it's the physicality, the speed, like the excitement, the adrenaline that all first got me into the game, I would say.
When you were watching those games, was it something where you could see yourself, like, you just wish that you were out on the ice and a part of those games? Or what was it more, what was on top of the physicality? What was it that really stuck with you, that when you left the rink, you were like, "You know what? That's a sport that I could see myself in one way or another being involved in." Do you remember?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say the biggest thing is I would just say that the fact it's nothing like any of the other major sports in the UK. So the UK thrives off three different sports: football or soccer, as it's called over in North America, rugby and cricket, really the three main driving sports. But the fact with ice hockey is that it's just, there is nothing. It's completely incomparable to what we have here, and it's just the fact that everyone moves at like 30 miles, and officially it's like 30, like 20, 30 miles an hour. But the fact is that everyone's skating so fast, and there's just the intricacy that's required, as well as the fact that you've got to control this small little black rubber disc,
Mhm.
all mastering so many different skills and putting them together. It was always something that I was so interested in, and it's just seeing these players play it with these personalities, and it's like what. I mean, I also watch for soccer, and I have these players who mean something to me in those sorts of ways. But it's like you get that same feeling when I was watching Flames. These players I remember from back in like the late, not in the noughties and the tens, and like the names still stick with me. And it's these players. They just like is my childhood.
Yeah, fair. Um, Something else that really stood out to me about your story is that you are a big fan of the history of the game. You like watching old games, including as well as some hockey documentaries and stuff like that. What do you think draws you to the history and the storytelling side of the sport, on top of course, the physicality, of course, the speed, the excitement of every game? But there's also a great story that's told behind that game. What was it, do you think, that drew you to that side of it as well?
Yeah, so I would personally say it's because I'm at heart a big nerd. I've always been the sort of person I will read till the cows come home about a subject that I'm really focusing. I think it's also the autism there that creeps in.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
it's honestly it's the deep diving on topics, and well, because I'm so so I've loved hockey for so long. I've always been, as soon as, well, not as soon as, but ever since, like, if I read articles upon articles. I like to deep dive about stats, especially. I like to research about history because it's a culture behind something I love so much, and culture explains so much. It explains how we decide to do things. It behaves our behavior, especially on and off the ice, and also fed into, when I go play games, or if, especially even now when I referee games, I just love to know why, what the history is behind someone on the ice, or a player on behind the ice, and it helps in so many different aspects, and not just that. I enjoy general knowledge stuff. I just love learning. I just love learning, I guess.
I want to shift focus to for a moment on your playing background. So you started playing in your mid-teens, which is ultimately a lot later than a lot of other players. It feels like the age-old story is that basically as soon as you could skate, or as soon as you could walk, rather, you're skating. You're lacing up those skates and you're out on the ice. But that wasn't the case for you. So what was it like for you, and what was that learning curve like early on in your playing career?
I must say that my whilst I had a passion for hockey and we would go to hockey games, I think it was really my dad wasn't so keen on me starting it, mainly because I think there was one really bogus reason I got, is was a North American sport. It's just like, why don't you try a traditional British sport? And because there's enough of them, and it was a bit frustrating, and it didn't make sense. Like, why do you marry an American then? But
Yeah. Yeah.
then so I never really got to get started as like a player. Like I've been skating long before. I had been skating before that, like my earlier teens, but I was more of a rink rat than I was ever a player. So it took me a while, to my mid-teens, as you said, to start playing some organized hockey. It doesn't help as well. There's long distances between rinks in the UK. My nearest rink next to Guildford is 30 miles, and there it's 40, 50, 60. And the distances mean it's harder to get everything together. So I always tried to do as much as I could. I had a net back I had a net at home I would shoot
Mhm.
at. I would do as much as I could with inline. I didn't play in organized inline either. I always found it a bit harder to get as invested in inline, but it's a great alternative, especially in
Mhm.
non-traditional hockey markets. But
Mhm.
it definitely was harder putting all together, especially with so much dry land equipment and training facilities. It's a lot harder to, put everything together. And as you said, I'm losing out on people who've got 5, if not 10 years
Mhm.
more experience than me. But it was just trying to combine all the individual parts, and as good as it could, do it all together. And then when I could start playing organized hockey, it's just get as much as you can.
Did you as you mentioned, obviously growing up in a very non-traditional hockey market, was it ever discouraging for you, because there was not only, of course, are you starting later than everyone else, but you have to travel so far, um, between, whether it's a game or between practices and all those different things. Were all Did all of those things ever make you feel discouraged, or maybe was that did that fuel the fire because you had to work a little bit harder, to be able to do the thing that you're obviously enjoying? Do you
Um,
remember?
I would say it was a bit of both, actually.
That's fair.
Definitely, I would say what discouraged me was the fact it was longer. It's harder to make different teams because there's so few junior programs that are going about. And it's also the feeling that it's less professional sometimes. Like, I mean, even I think we'll talk about this later, but I've played on teams where you didn't get ice cuts, like, and this is meant to be in between periods, and this is meant to be like top level competition. And I think things like that would definitely annoy me when I was playing it, but it was also like a push because you always, especially if you played you played teams from other countries or you went to other places, like it's another thing I'll talk about later is this, it's that drive. Like I started in a very non-traditional hockey market, and when I go abroad, you're always going to fight those stereotypes, but you feel like a bit of pride, like when you can say you got this tournament over another person, or you made
Mhm.
this over another person from a very traditional hockey market like Canada, the US, Sweden, Finland, whatever. You could say, well, despite all the tribulations, I've gotten this. I've managed to achieve this. So yeah, I would definitely say both.
Interesting that there is such a combination of both, maybe a drive, but also maybe a deterrence to continue playing the sport. But you ultimately overcame all of that, and you played in, for example, the UK Elite League. And I just wanted to know what that experience was like for you, and maybe what were some of the takeaways, especially making it to that level, knowing the journey that it took to get you to that spot.
Yeah, so it's the women's hockey structure in the UK is quite unique to the country, I would say. So I did indeed get to play in the women's elite league for the only London team currently in the top flight. Because and on another tangent, the UK, the women's side has relegation promotion, but the men's side does not. But anyway, I played in the Elite League for the one team currently in the Elite League from London, which was a team called Streatham. And it's a very interesting league because you would think, well, for a non-traditional hockey market, there's a big mixture between the homegrown talent, but you also get you NCAA players. You get your NCAA three players. Like I played with two people. Like on my last season, I was playing with one who played UNH and Angela Taylor. She's now the coach of the team out in Switzerland, the Zurich Lions. And then I also played with another person who played at Yale, and I'm now there's people who played NCAA double three. You've got both Brits who've gone to that side, and you also get those who've moved to the UK because they've got a job here or they've
Yeah.
got some other opportunity. But then you also get people who played in the league I referee now, the SDHL, and you get provincial women's hockey league. So there's a massive amount of these imports who have played good hockey, and it definitely rubs off on the UK players, I feel. And overall, I definitely thought it taught me resilience because
Mm.
the the journey to get to the elite league for myself was not easy at all. Like I've played in every single level of women's hockey in the UK. There were quite a few years of stuck in the middle league, which is called the Premier League. Um, it was hard because definitely um there's a lot of competition when there's only six teams in the top elite league, and yeah, it just taught me hard work pays off at the end of the day. That's all it does, and not to let this imposter syndrome or your inner saboteur get to you because it's just it's going to be tough, but there's that salami approach, and there's just to keep working. I say that's what taught me most.
Nice, that's fantastic. And you just mentioned it as well, and of course, I mentioned it off the top, being an official, and so I want to, as we now transition to the next conversation, that's your transition to officiating, which happened about 6 years ago. You made that move to officiating. What motivated that transition, and maybe um, something that we don't necessarily think of when we think about an official. What appealed to you thinking about that side of the game rather than playing? Now you're watching, you're observing, you're obviously officiating. What drew you to that side of the game as well?
Yeah, so to start off with, I first thought about changing up and becoming official. It was about 2019. It was after playoffs, which another interesting thing about the UK is the women's playoffs go into June. It's almost like the Stanley Cup final, but without the hundreds of game sevens. But it's an interesting. So we just played the final. I had a frustrating loss, and then we'd had not long after that we'd had trials to our because we got promoted, but we lost the cup anyway. It's a very confusing shed. It's a confusing system. What with cups and promotions and whatnot. Then it's all different now anyway. But we'd had a bad loss in one of the. We got knocked out in the final of a cup, the cup for our second tier, and then afterwards, the fact that we'd had trials, I think before that actually, and it was a team I trialed with, and I got unceremoniously dumped down a level, and I was realizing, whilst yes, I had potential to keep improving, and I did. I also realized I've got to start thinking of investing in another pathway that's going to lead me somewhere as well, because I've always the biggest thing with hockey is I've always wanted to do something impressive with hockey. That's what
Mhm.
I've always wanted to do. I put a lot of my heart and soul into this sport. I want to achieve something, and I knew I could achieve something still as a player, but I also wanted to start investing somewhere I could really take it to the next level. And I knew that with officiating, it is indeed about observing, but it's also about using the noggin. It's
Mm.
about knowing how to work it, how to read the game, how to apply rules, because there's application. It's not just black and white, even though some people think it is. And I've
Yeah.
always been a cerebral player. Like there's the one thing I have is I have a good understanding.
Mhm.
If I might not be able to dangle, I might not be able to be the best at some stick handling while I was dangling, but
Mhm.
I knew I could use my brain is one thing I know how to do. So I always thought, and I was always a good skater because I've been skating longer than I've been playing. So I thought combine them both, and I think that's why I thought, well, I'm not also super charismatic. So
Mhm.
I thought, well, yes, you need a bit of charisma to be a referee at the end of the day,
I
but
think so. I think so. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, coaching just wasn't my bag, so I thought, well, let's choose officiating. So I started shortly
Well,
thereafter.
and you've also now, as we look at that officiating career that you've had thus far, you've also now moved from the UK to Sweden, and you're studying the game. You're becoming even stronger as an official. As an official, what pushed you to continue in that development and go to, as you mentioned, you're in the SDHL now, correct? Yeah, that's obviously a premier league when you're as certainly up until the PWHL came in, like that was the league, right? Now it's also still the league, but there's also of course now the PWHL. But um what pushed you to decide that that's going to be the next step for you in your officiating career is to step up to the SDHL and the tremendously strong league that is in Sweden?
Yeah, so I think a big there was the part that I am uh I don't know the word sounds very weird. A Swedophile. That sounds awful. I always liked Sweden as well. I learned to speak Swedish before I came here, and I started very long time ago to learn. But there was that aspect of it. There is my admiration for the country, but there's also I also wanted to use it as I was more used to the European style of how hockey is run, I guess, and I also knew it was very doable to move to Sweden, and I'd had good contact with the then head of the women's refereeing there. And she's no longer the head, but she's Stina Nilsson, and I managed to contact. We got a response, and I thought, well, UK is the UK. Like, there is good hockey there. I definitely, but there's also the traditional hockey market in Sweden, as you said, is the best women's league probably outside of the PWHL still. I think, especially with future um international refereeing, like it's one of the best preparational areas to go into, I feel. And it prepares, like it's top level women's hockey internationally level. That's why I always thought it was something to at least try and get into.
And you've mentioned in past conversations about how much you've seen in your time as an official. You've seen the game grow. I have a ton of questions around like some of those more specific aspects, but I want to lump everything together here to just kind of get your perspective as you've been involved in the SDHL, as you've been able to, you get a unique vantage point for the growth of the game. And so I just want to know from your perspective, both pre the PWHL as well as obviously now as the PWHL continues to grow on this side of the ocean, how you're seeing the game of women's hockey specifically, how you're seeing it grow from your perspective.
Yeah, so I would definitely say the first way in which it's grown is the professionality. Definitely first and foremost is the way it's treated less as a gimmick and more of a serious attitude, serious pathway that female f- female players can take themselves. They can aim for a professional career nowadays rather than previously it was you finished college and you went into a normal job almost, or
Yes.
you could at least try and make it in one of the assortments of the leagues that they had in like the CWHL and whatnot. But I think it's definitely the professionality of it that has changed more recently. I think it's also the investment in it has definitely changed the product. Like at the end of the day, it's the product. Like the players have gone faster. The players have gone harder hitting. And another thing, previously, it was all too common that especially outside of North America, I would say, in Europe, definitely you would see in European leagues like hitting was more or less always because it was almost ref to the book
Mhm.
um, regarding body checking and but nowadays like it's seeing the girls like you're seeing the bigger ones who use their frames and they use their size and they can use it more as a male hockey player
Uh,
would use nowadays and it's just seeing the game become more like the professional product that we already see with male hockey players and definitely would say it's an equalization between what already existed for men and now can exist for women.
I love that. Um, we've spoken a little bit about the PWHL, specifically the product on the ice. But one of the things that always stands out, and one of the things that whether you're new to women's hockey, new to the PWHL, new to that space, one thing that always comes up is just how accepting and how welcoming that space is. And part of that is because people can go to those games and be themselves. They don't have to be something they're not. They can let themselves shine however that may look for them. You've spoken in the past about gender identity and queerness in hockey. From your perspective, how does the environment in hockey affect who feels welcome to participate?
Oh, it's one of the greatest factors for how it affects because you see that the difference in fans is like it's especially noticeable. I think it's also different in other leagues because it's seen especially here in Europe where we have some countries that have a bit more of a I wouldn't I'd hesitate to say unwelcoming, but it's just other leagues that don't have that same focus, and there is definitely a miasma or there's a fear that can linger in the air, whilst in other leagues it can be a much better um um, much easier environment. I've noticed it as a player. Like
Yeah,
I've played on teams in my life where it just feels like everyone has to conform to a hetero like life's not conform, but it's just not talked about in the same way. While I've been on brilliant teams, like my last team in Strem it was one of the greatest. Like it's just noticed there's less tension in the locker room, but there's also less tension among the fans as well.
yeah.
I would definitely say, and it's just it just feels like that there's just less prejudice in the air, and you can. It's just great that people can just cheer and not get worried that they'll be a not attacked, but they'll get harassed in the stands or whatnot that you can see in some other sports, like the old way that football used to happen in the UK in like the 90s and noughties and well the 80s and 90s, should I say.
Yeah. You've also had the opportunity to consult on creating more inclusive language when it comes to rule changes. So I want to know, why does language matter so much in shaping the culture of the game? Maybe now more than ever, and certainly for future generations as well.
I would definitely say it does have an impact upon who feels welcome in the hockey world, definitely. So it was like just stuff making terms for like officials be a bit more gender neutral. Like previously, officials were being called linesmen and well, not well, it's always referee and linesmen, but it's just stuff like well, it looks so silly when even still, like you sometimes hear it in Sweden nowadays. It's like, oh, today's linesmen are, and they'll say two women names, and then it just feels like, hold on, is this now are we trying to make the norm still that hockey is a man's game and we only should focus on the men's team because there is still that issue of there is a masculine normative environment that we have with ice hockey, especially in traditional hockey markets like North America and Sweden. And I think if you make that language more inclusive, especially around like rules, like saying too many players rather than too many men. On the face of it, people will accuse it of being woke, or they'll accuse it of being pointless, or but at the end of the day, it's also it makes everything much more cleaner. It makes everything much more applicable to everyone because we try and live in an equal world of that sort. But it not only does that, it also it just shows female officials, shows female players that it's all one general image, I would say.
Before we get to the final segment of the show, the final buzzer segment of the show, as it's been deemed, I do want to find out from you. You know, you've had a really interesting journey, as we've talked about, starting later, the having to, you know, fight that maybe the discouraged feeling that you had at times because of the distances that you had to travel, um, all of those different things, now to becoming an official in the SDHL. For someone considering officiating or maybe finding just a different path in hockey, what advice might you offer to them?
Um, I would definitely say give it a go is the first. So, especially at younger ages, it's very easy to accommodate both. I would definitely say get depending on your country, because the path into officiating, especially, is very much dependent on where you live. Like in countries like the UK, smaller ones, it's often you go to the association, the national association. But in bigger hockey countries, often going to your local team, and for when you're refereeing like those under 12, under 10 games. And I definitely feel like it's better to at least ask. Like, the worst thing that happens is you find out you hate it, because it's a hard job. Like, at the end of the day, no one goes to become a referee because they want to be liked. That's the
That's true, yeah.
So I think it's often a case of just you just gotta give it a go. Like, it's the best thing, and you can still at younger ages do it alongside playing. If you find out it's really good in a couple of years, you can focus like your full time on it. But otherwise, just give it a go, I say.
It's great. Sometimes advice doesn't have to be this super profound advice. It can be sometimes just something super simple and super straightforward, and in this case, it's just give it a go. There's only one way you can find out, right? Just give it a go. If you like it, great. If you don't, you tried it, and that's okay too. Yeah. Okay. Final buzzer segment of the show. This is just a really fun way, rapid fire way to wrap up today's conversation. Are you ready to give it a go?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Let's dive in. First one for you. What's your go-to snack or routine to get ready for a big game on the ice?
So I definitely find they're related. So this sounds a bit, I wouldn't say it's cringe, but I go IKEA. I have my lunch at IKEA. It's a really
Wow.
no, so there's a method in the madness here, because I in Sweden there's not just meatballs and mashed potatoes or chips or whatever you have. They also have like there's a chicken fillet or there's a cod and chips option. So I use that. I then sit down with my drink. I'll take like usually a coffee or like the lingonberry juice, and I actually use that time and I like to research the teams. Like, I like to see what everyone's had for, like, I don't know, Pim's recent points, what was their most recent game together, and I use that for that game. Otherwise, there is one other snack I usually have I usually have ice cream for a game. Like, if I'm talking just the food from IKEA is not actually that unhealthy. The ice
Mhm.
the unhealthy bit, but that's like
Mm.
that gets me in the mood.
I should have guessed that at any point in your in this, you would definitely want to rely back on that passion for a knowledge of the game. So this is a getting ready your routines, your rituals, your game day routines and rituals. Of course, that would involve researching the other team. Silly me for asking.
Uh,
Um, After a long game, how do you like to unwind and recharge?
yeah, so I think that's a bit of a hard one, because like, often I'm a big like film person, TV film person, so I will usually often just relax in that way. Otherwise, I definitely say calling like my parents, because I'm very close to them. Like, they are definitely some of my biggest supporters. So I will often talk to them about anything. Sometimes it's about the game. Sometimes it's just how they're doing. So I definitely would say getting in contact with the family again is
Yeah,
definitely the biggest thing.
yeah, staying connected. I like that. That's fair. Is there a song or is there a type of music that always helps you get ready for game day? After you've done your routine at IKEA, is there a song or a band or a playlist that is always your go-to?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna get massacred here. I do bring a speaker to the because the referees listen to a bit of music before we have our little pre-game chat about like the match. So I have two playlists. One of them is like I have a pretty standard Euro Dunka Dunka like techno
Mm,
playlist, like, and if it's not like a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday match, I'll probably play that. But there's this other genre in Sweden called dance band, which is mostly Swedish, a little bit of Norwegian, and maybe the odd Danish or Finnish group. And it's a genre it's not really country, but it's like not a big band. It's like a country, like, but also sax, guitar, like, very dated. Like, I
Mm,
get called, like, people call me for, like, a granny for it sometimes. Like, what 60-year-olds or plus listen to, and I have a playlist. I will play it, especially if it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday match. And, yeah, the younger refs don't appreciate it.
mm.
Sometimes I hate it, but, that's definitely it. So if you ever get time, listen to a bit of dance band.
Okay. I have some homework. I will do that after our conversation. I'll do some research. Um, what's a surprising lesson that hockey has taught you that you carry off the ice?
Um, I think it would be to know and bide your time. It sounds really weird for a frenetic and fast-paced sport. You would think 60 minutes isn't a long time, but you would be surprised what changes. So I've definitely learned that because sometimes I've wanted to do something in hockey, like a change has come across, and like it's like I don't know if I got cut from a team or something, or I want to make like some form of promotion inside the ref field or whatnot. It's just understand, hey, bide your time. People come and go, like opportunities come and go. In Swedish, we say det går fort i hockey. It goes quick in hockey.
Mhm.
So things can change like that, just like they can. So it's to know when to strike and when sometimes when not to. So
Good. I like that. I wanted to wrap things up with this question. We talked about your love for documentaries, for game stats, game history. So I thought a fun way to wrap up this conversation would be to find out if you could officiate any game in hockey history, which one would it be and why?
it's hard to pinpoint like one exactly. I
I'll
would
take anyone. I'll take anyone,
I don't
like a
know.
top five.
Like top five. I'll probably put all like the well, there's been more than five Olympic finals, but I would definitely say just any super important game that is like winner takes all like that. The Olympic, like the first one, like anyone want to do like 98 in Nagano, that would have been something to do. Or otherwise, if it wasn't an Olympic final, like I would definitely say last season that we had a 9 period it was the promotion series to the SDHL that Färjestad won against Leksand. I refereed the one promotion series that was over in 2 games. So
Mhm.
there wasn't any overtime in that one. But the other people who refereed up in a bit further up north in Sweden, they had a 9 period game. The longest game in Swedish hockey history ended in it was 7-0. Was it 6 or 7 OT? So that's it. I think it might have been 7 OT. I might have been 6, but so 9 periods of hockey. I think it was like 2 a.m. or something,
Nice.
or 3 a.m. because it was an early game. But 7 hours of hockey. Like, how many games like that are you going to do in your life? Probably like one. So,
Mhm.
get to say that you refed the longest game. So probably that. It sounds crazy, but I would definitely want to like go in the history books. Like that.
Well, I mean, it only makes sense, your love for history and all that sort of stuff. It'd be great to be in that
Yeah.
book as well, of course. Yeah. All right. That wraps up our final buzzer segment of the show. And that is the final segment of today's episode. Eva, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time, for reaching out, for connecting. I've really enjoyed hearing more about your story. And I can't wait to continue cheering you on. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow hockey fans. Your support helps me to continue bringing you stories just like this one from around the world of women's hockey. I'm Chris Sinclair. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time on Rinkside Rundown.